Curiosity Club. I hope that you're all staying safe at home. I'm sure you've been doing lots of reading. Okay, so let's get straight into our new story. Today we're going to be looking at Wisp, a story of hope. Written by Zana Fraillon and illustrated by Grahame Baker-Smith. So as always, let's start by looking at this cover, because there's quite a lot of interesting clues about what the story is going to be about. So let's have a look at this cover and the title, Wisp, a story of hope. So we can see who we think might be our main character here. We can see a clue about the setting in the corner there. What is a wisp? Yeah, it's a bit like a cloud or smoke, isn't it? Let's have a look at the colours the illustrator's chosen to use. So it's mostly blue. What kind of story do you think this is going to be? So it's a story of hope. Why do you think the character might need hope? And does the setting have anything to do with it? Okay, so as a reader, I want to find out a little bit more information about this. So I'm going to look at the back, the blurb of this story. And on the back it says, a powerful and uplifting story of a young refugee who discovers hope. Okay, there is a key word there, and this key word is something we need to understand before we read this story. Refugee. Have you heard of that word before? Refugee? What does that mean? If you haven't heard that word before, a refugee is somebody who needs to leave their home because it is no longer safe. So they are looking for a new home somewhere safe. So they've had to leave everything behind. Imagine if your home was no longer safe and you had to leave everything. That would be a very difficult thing to do, wouldn't it? So our main character here is a refugee. Okay, now that we understand that he is a refugee, we start understanding the cover a little bit more. Okay, let's start reading. Okay, let's just look at these illustrations on the title page. What do they tell you about the place that the main character lives? Idris lived in a small, small world. A world where fences grew from the dirt and where shadows ruled. Have a look at that illustration of Idris. What does it tell you about him? Yes, you can see that he's alone. Where shadows ruled. And you can see the vocabulary matches with the illustration. The shadows are everywhere. A world with no trees to give shade, no rivers to drink or seas to swim. A world full of people, but where everyone was alone. Until one day, a wisp flew in on the evening wind. Dust rose up in swarms around it. Feet trampled it into the dirt. Nobody noticed it. Nobody except Idris. Idris gently lead the wisp from the ground. He softly away the dust and dirt and footprints. And that was when he felt it. The smallest whisper of want. Okay, so on this page, the author has made some interesting choices, and I don't know if you've noticed it, but there are a couple of unusual words there, weren't there? So, gentleed and softlead. Have you ever heard those words before? You might have heard of gently and softly, but gentleed and softlead aren't real words. So the author chose to make up some words here. Why do you think that was? The smallest whisper of want. What does that mean? The smallest whisper of want. What is want? What does it mean when you want something? The wisp began to wriggle, flitting and fluttering. It bustled Idris past rows of tents, over the moonlit dirt, and along the fence's glare, until it stilled at the feet of a man, ancient and cracked. "Is this yours?" Idris asked. The man's eyes were long ago dulled, but he took the wisp in his hands. He held it to his ear. Slowly the spark of a smile lit his lips. "Once," he whispered. The wisp pulsed bright. The man lifted his voice and music poured into the night. A swelling sea of rememberings twirled on the air and shimmered in the breeze. The people stopped. They smiled, and together they listened to the blazing bright heartbeat of a song. And when the man's voice quietened, there was just the hint of a hum in his step, and a bright in his eyes where the dullness no longer settled. When the next wisp flew in on the evening wind, Idris knew what to do. He let himself be bustled past and over and along, until the wisp found who it was seeking. The woman looked at Idris, a sad etched deep into her face. She held the wisp to her ear. A light flickered softly in her eyes. So again, the author's chosen to do something interesting here. I wonder if you noticed it. A sad etched deep into her face. The author's chosen to use the word sad as a noun. A sad. Is sad a thing? No, you're right, it's a feeling word. It's an adjective. But the author's chosen to describe it as a sad etched deep into her face. But do you understand what the author means by that? Yes, that the sadness showed on her face. "Once," she whispered, and the wisp quivered with delight. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think this wisp does? Let's see if you're right. The memory spun from the woman's fingers and rippled through the air. A forest blossomed from the dirt and pulled free a storm. The people stopped. They smiled, and together they watched as a thunder of colours rained down from the sky. And when the woman's fingers stilled, there was just a splash of happy in her words, and the sad on her face was not as deep as before. So what does the wisp do? I think you're right, it shows people memories, doesn't it? Memories of a time before they were in this dark place. More days passed, and more wisps flew in on the evening wind. Onces were whispered, and rememberings released. What are onces? Yeah, you're right, it's people's memories. Idris tasted the pull of the moonlight and explored the soft scent of new knowings. Can you taste a pull of moonlight? Can you smell new knowings? He felt the rumbles of the earth and the tremble of stories from 1,000 kingdoms. Then, One evening, a wisp appeared that did not wriggle or flutter or flit. Instead, it settled at Idris's feet, and Idris wondered, was this wisp meant for him? He waited and waited, but no memories appeared. Idris had lived his whole life in this small, small world. There was nothing else to remember. Why did he have no memories? Yeah, Idris has lived in this refugee camp for his whole life. He doesn't have any beautiful memories to remember. Then Idris held the wisp close. Slowly, his ache was calmed, and a seed of understanding began to grow deep inside his heart. For Idris's wisp wasn't a memory. It was a promise. Idris felt his feet begin to move and his arms begin to shake. He danced free his promise, sending it shooting from the stars and bright soaking the dirt. The people stopped. They smiled, and together they felt the promise of a dream. Idris lifted his hands and let his wisp catch on the wind. He watched it wing higher and higher, flying over the fences to where people had forgotten how to welcome wide field. It splashed in the rivers and danced in the trees. It carried with it the heartbeat of a song and the colours of rain, the scent of new knowings and the tremble of stories from 1,000 kingdoms. The promise grew stronger with each person it touched. Soon, it whispered. Someday. Okay, so what did the wisp show for Idris? We know that he didn't have any beautiful memories like the other people. Yeah, you're right. It showed his future. It showed him things to hope for. So this wisp gave all of the people in the refugee camp hope. Hope by remembering the beautiful things they had seen before, and hope by showing things that they might see one day. That might have been the first time you've ever heard about refugees. So if it is, maybe talk to your parents about it, maybe do some research online with an adult and find out a little bit more about the way refugees live. I really enjoyed that story. It's beautifully written and beautifully illustrated, and it's got a really strong message that I think stays with you, which is what powerful stories do, don't they? Okay, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you have subscribed and I will see you next time. Bye!